Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Well, she says she will not go back to Iran. As the trial of 3 American hikers accused of espionage gets set to resume this week in an Iranian court, one of those Americans, Sarah Shourd, is standing firm. Now, Shourd was released by Iran on bail last September for medical reasons after spending 14 months in detention. Now, she says she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder and that a court ordeal would be unbearable after what she's already been through. U.S. officials say the spy charges are absurd, but Iran is adamant it wants to see Sarah Shourd in court. She is my guest today. Thank you very much for joining us from New York, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'm going to get to the case in just a second. I just want to ask whether at this point there is any possibility that you would change your mind between now and this court session, which I believe is actually the 3rd session. It's been twice delayed, and perhaps actually appear in court in person.
No, I can't go back. There's a part of me that would like to go and stand by Shane and Josh. It's going to be a difficult experience for them, and I would like to defend our innocence. But a clinical psychologist has diagnosed me with PTSD and said that if I return, it will aggravate my condition and it could result in permanent damage.
Okay, now, obviously you were just referring to Shane Bauer and Josh Fatal. Those are the 2 other Americans with whom, now, you say you were hiking at the time back in July 2009 in northern Iraq, in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, when you inadvertently wandered into Iranian territory. Now, the Iranians are saying, using that as evidence, that you were spies. You say that it was unmarked. You had absolutely no idea. It was very confusing. They're continuing with these allegations, aren't they?
Yes, and the border is absolutely unmarked. My fiancé Shane Bauer and I were living in Damascus, and I was teaching. We traveled to Iraqi Kurdistan, where no American has ever been, in recent decades, killed or kidnapped. It's a safe place for tourism. It's often referred to as the other Iraq. And when Iranian soldiers found us hiking, they forced us into their Jeep and they drove us into Iran. The first thing they did is stop in the nearest town to buy me proper clothing, because in Iran it's mandatory for a woman to wear a headscarf, and I wasn't wearing one. So the soldiers knew from the first minute that I had no intention, that none of us had any intention of being anywhere near Iran. And for that matter, we don't know if we were, because the border is entirely unmarked.
That was actually my next question. Now, a lot of people who have been following this case, one of the questions that might occur to them is, well, northern Kurdistan, even if you don't know where that border is, even if you don't know how it's marked or it's not marked at all, you did sort of know that it must have been some sort of risk. You know Iran is there. You know it's nearby.
No, we had no indication that we were in any danger. The tourist site that we were at is very popular. There were hundreds of Kurdish people there celebrating, and they pointed out a good trail for us. And they said, there's no problems up there. Never in my wildest dreams or my worst nightmares would I imagine that an unmarked border would be that close to a tourist site. And this area that we were in is not a war zone. This is where Kurdish people vacation and enjoy time with their families.
Now, Sarah, you spent about 14 months in detention before your release on medical grounds last September. However, both Shane and Josh, they continue. It's been, I think, more than 21 months at this point. Have you been at all in touch with them? Have you had any update on how they're holding up through all this?
No, we haven't. And it's cruel, really. For more than 5 months, we haven't had a phone call. I write them and send them letters every single day, but I don't know if they get them. We send them books. You know, my own mental health condition makes me even more worried about Shane and Josh. They've been there so much longer than I was. And we have no idea if they're safe, if they're healthy. They could be hunger striking. When I was in prison, we resorted to hunger strike several times because our conditions were so bad and we had no contact with our families.
Did you get the sense at any time during your own detention, say, that there were some perhaps sympathetic ears among some of the Iranians who were surrounding you, whether the guards, prison officials, any authorities you came in contact with, people who were basically saying, don't worry, we know really where you're coming from. This will all be over soon?
Definitely. We've heard that from day one. When the soldiers were driving us to Tehran, they told us that they were taking us to the airport and that we were going home. And then instead they took us to a prison and tore us apart and threw us in cells, and we didn't even see each other for 3 months. My investigator, after 2 months of investigation, he came in and he said, Sarah, the investigation is on hold. And I asked him why. And I said, oh, am I going to court? Am I going to be tried? Am I going home? And he said, Sarah, I know you're innocent, but this has become political and I don't know what's going to happen.
And
5 months.
Sorry.
Oh, good. Oh, just 5 months into the investigation. I'm sorry, the investigation was finished after 2 months. 5 months into prison, that was December '09, some men came to visit us and they were all wearing suits and they said that we were going to court. And they said, after court, you're going home. And I asked them, are we being charged with espionage? And they said, it doesn't matter. You're going to court and you're going home. Just, don't worry about it. That was 16 months ago. Shane and Josh have never met with their lawyer and they haven't had a trial. There's no due process in our case whatsoever, and it's time for a resolution.
It sounds, for anyone listening to what you're describing, it sounds like, and I assume perhaps you have the same feeling, that you've been caught up in a giant geopolitical game. It's no secret that the U.S. and Iran have a very low-ebb relationship right now.
Yes, yeah. My investigators said the same thing. I mean, we're caught in a sort of tug-of-war, and there's 30 years of animosity between our governments, and it has nothing to do with Shane and Josh and I as individuals.
What would you say to people, playing devil's advocate here, that's saying, well, they seem really innocent. They all seem just like, innocent hikers, and it's the perfect cover. They actually are spies.
That it's an absurd and baseless allegation. Shane and Josh and I don't speak a word of Farsi. We had no equipment. It would be extremely dangerous to put ourselves in that position. If you look at our records, all three of us are peace activists. We support Palestinian rights. I was in the region teaching Iraqi refugees, and my fiancé Shane Bauer is a very well-known, he's an up-and-coming journalist that's written for The Nation and Mother Jones, and he writes critical of U.S. military intervention. Our political beliefs are in some ways in line with the Iranian criticism of the West and the West's intervention in the Middle East.
So you find
We're the last people that should be suspected of espionage.
That's what I was going to ask. You find it almost ironic, it seems, that especially your fiancé, from the likes of it, he writes about the poor and the oppressed, that he should be held by a country like Iran. He would seem to sympathize with them.
Yes, and the same is true for my friend Josh. He's a teacher and he's traveled all around the world teaching about environmental justice.
And what about the role that, or the help that you've gotten from the U.S. authorities on this side? Do you feel like your case has been a little bit brushed aside, a little forgotten? There's so many other big things going on right now and they just don't have the time, or do you feel like you've gotten the attention that this case merits?
Nothing is enough until Shane and Josh are home. 21 months is horrendous. No one ever believed this could happen in their worst nightmares. And many countries are helping us, but I want to call on my own country and many other countries, the whole international community, to really step up to the plate and not forget Shane and Josh. I know there's a lot of really important and difficult things happening in the world, but Shane and Josh are two innocent men that have done nothing wrong, and we need them back.
And Sarah, even though you will not physically be appearing in that courtroom if and when this case goes ahead next Wednesday, presumably your lawyer, I understand, says that you are willing to be tried in absentia, or at least to perhaps even have your case tried separately, alone?
Whatever it takes. I just think that it's time for Shane and Josh to get a fair trial. Recently, the foreign minister of Iran, Saleh, when he was in Geneva, he compared Shane and Josh's case and my case to the two German journalists that were recently shown compassion and leniency and released from Iranian prison after 4 months. And he said that he would recommend to the judiciary that they do the same for Shane and Josh. President Ahmadinejad made me the same promise when I met him last September. He said, I will tell the judiciary to treat this with leniency and expediency. 21 months is not expedient, but I would like to believe that the president has passed on this message to the judiciary, and we are close to the end of this.
And finally, Sarah, I'd just like to ask is, you and your friends, you did know the region well, you've lived in the region yourself. Have your views about Iran changed at all, or do you think this is really just a case of the government mismanaging things, and your views about the people themselves might not have changed?
Nothing's changed. I mean, if there's one thing I can get out of 14 months of solitary confinement is to come out feeling that I haven't been essentially changed by the experience and that I still hold my beliefs and my values is for me a victory. And I spent one of the best years of my life in the Middle East, and I can't wait to go back. I think it's going to be part of my healing to be a free woman in the Middle East again.
And very finally, how's your own health right now, Sarah? How are you doing? Because you did leave on medical grounds last September. You okay now?
Yeah, actually, I didn't have any physical health problems. It's just the mental health.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for being up bright and early in New York City, joining us there. And the case is set to resume in Iran this week. You and your two defendants still facing those charges from Iran on espionage and illegal entry, charges that you all say are absolutely groundless, baseless, and absurd. Thanks very much. We wish you all luck. And thanks to all of you for watching the interview on France 24.